Aloha Hawaii, this is Pokalai Nui and you are listening to Hawaiian Potpourri. This is the fourth program for the Sunday morning show, which goes for 2 hours. The fourth program is broken up into almost a half-hour segment itself. Today is the 16th day of September in the year 2012, and we are broadcasting on radio station KWAI. It's at 1080 a.m. and the time now is 7:35. We had been talking in the last half hour about the idea that a people without vision will perish, and Michael had called and shared his thoughts on that matter, and then built a structure of moving from that to what was that? Exercising rights and responsibilities, and part of that responsibility is a responsibility to dream. And at times we are caught up in our societal, what do you call it? Oppressions, that at times it's very difficult to bring about the dream. So lawyers, rather than dreaming about lawyering, are only thinking about judgeship or the next judgeship. Doctors facing the same issues, perhaps being enslaved by pharmaceutical organizations rather than caring for their patients. And then he moved from there to what we need to do is be able to leave behind the insanity of the world and see something far better than just being engaged or intertwined or being sucked under with thoughts of war and thoughts of beating the other person. And in order to do that, we need to understand our own deep cultures, what motivates us. So we need to take that inventory of ourselves, that introspection. So it forces us to pause as we ourselves become judgmental, or as we ourselves act in a particular way, and look at our deeper selves and see what is that deep culture that motivates us. At least by that introspection, we become more sensitive, and we can look at how others also, what their needs are, what their expectations are, and the rest. That's part of the golden rules that we follow at Halina'opono. The second golden rule is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which calls for that introspection. But it also helps you to understand what your expectations are and where do those values come from. And if you find that those values do not meet within the community that you have moved to or that you are now working in, then you may be more able to adjust yourself to the society that you are working within, or at least being able to see what the deep values of that society is and judge whether or not it needs some leadership in changing its values or not. So it leads you to the third golden rule, which is do unto others as they would have you do unto them, which calls for being culturally sensitive, being sensitive to other people's backgrounds, their cultures, and then you can more appropriately, what is the word for it, navigate with yourself and with the larger society. But he also draws that next statement of the need, and this is what our sister who had called also shared, about being able to prophesize, to bring about that vision. And I was thinking to myself a number of years back, about 2-3 years back, where in the world are our prophets? In Hawaii, we have a history of prophets who could cast that vision, and they had that power to do so. And I asked myself, where are our prophets today? And then I recalled a lesson that I had received from Auntie Pilahi Paki when Puanani, and she and I would study with her. Puanani asked, where do we place the second post on the island of Kaho'olawe? We had placed the initial post, the central post, but where does the second post go? Do we face the east, the west? Do we face it in accordance with the winds, etc., etc.? And Auntie Pilahi says, O vai oi, and who are you? And so Pua asked, what do you mean, who am I? She says, yes, who are you? Are you not a descendant of your ancestors? And so why do you ask, what would your ancestors have done? Because you are made up as your ancestors are. You carry not only some of those essential genes or DNA or whatever they call it, but you are the representative of your ancestors. You have a thinking mind, you have a feeling heart, you have senses, you can see, you can smell, you can taste, you can think. So you apply those essential bases that they were, which means that they were human beings and so are you. And so don't wait for an answer of how other people did it. You have the makings to do it yourself. Just observe your surroundings and use your sensibility and take your part in doing it. And so as I recalled that lesson, I said, I am the prophet. We are all the prophets, and rather than waiting for someone else to do it, we need to join together in that prophecy of what our vision is, rather than waiting for someone else to hand it to us on a silver platter. And so based on that, I took a hand in trying to develop a statement. And so I wrote an article that is called the 2035 edition of the Traveler's Guide to Hawaii, which is a prophecy of what 25 years from the time I wrote it, Hawaii should look like, and what the values are and what the ways of implementing those values. But that's just one experience, and in that I am inviting others to join in this common prophecy, whether it is in this program, in a discussion of our futures here, or it is in private meetings, and we will be calling some private meetings, but you should also initiate your own and find opportunities to meet with others and begin this visioning of where Hawaii should go or where our societies should go. Join in that prophecy. If you would like to see at least one example of how I did it, then you can go to my website, and it is at hawaiianperspectives.org. And there you will find a document that talks about the 2035 edition of the Traveler's Guide to Hawaii. I will be posting another document, which is a draft that Michael and I and a third friend have participated in putting together. It's only in its draft form, but if you will go again to that website, and I would suggest maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday going to it, and you will find a draft of a statement. It's called Envisioning a Future for Hawaii, and it talks about the major changes, and it begins very similar to what Michael had talked about, a look into our own deep cultures, what our basic beliefs are, and determining whether or not we should continue in one system or change a society into another system. At least in my analysis, I begin with a DIE, deep culture, that we are being driven by in our formal systems. And DIE stands for domination, individualism, and exclusion. And so I try to make the case that we should shift to, instead of domination, it should be an olu-olu relationship, a more friendly and non-competitive, non-dominating relationship. Instead of individualism, it should be lokahi. We should work with a broader sense of what our community is, rather than just being a community of one, that is myself. So rather than individualism, it should be lokahi. And rather than exclusion, we should always be thinking of aloha, to be inclusive, to bring people into the circle of humanity, and not follow anymore the pattern of depriving even the sense of their being human beings. So we call others part of the axis of evil, and then we give them names such as kamis or gooks or other things, and deny them the humanity that we all deserve to be treated with. And by the switch of this kind of deep culture, then let's take a look at how our society should be built up or built around. Okay, more to that if you went to that website. Our telephone number here is 524-1080. You can give me a call and you can join in this discussion. Let's go to our next caller. Aloha, caller. Welcome to the program.
Okay, I'd like to interject another thought.
Yes.
Perhaps besides, I think it's time to stop using words and take action. And by action, I mean, let's look at what's needed. As Michael said, referred to, we need vision.
Mm-hmm.
In order to take action, we will take action on ourselves. Therefore, what organ is vision associated with? Let us look at that situation and how we are trying to perceive the truth and what obstructions are there in front of us that divert us from having the vision to see the truth. I think we can't really come up with a satisfactory answer until we see the truth. I think that we agree that God is truth. Perhaps I'm talking too much or too complicated.
So are you suggesting that we should begin with the analysis of how we see God?
Yes. I associate God with truth, and both scientists and religionistas are on the same path. But one thinks it's found the truth, and the other keeps seeking. So I think that's the conflict between science and nature, which is absurd because they're closely related in what they are trying to perceive. So therefore, I suggest let's start this way. This is not aggressive towards anyone else. It's taking control of ourselves, and how can we use what we've been given to the advantage of everyone, of all humanity, because we all have most of us have some of these attributes that we were given in order to allow us to survive. And I agree, vision for the human is essential. Excuse my preaching. So I'll let you say a few words.
As you say that, I have a number of things that rushes through my thoughts. And you start out taking a very physical approach. Let's take a look at vision and yes.
May I intrude again? No, I had started off taking a very abstract view and deciding that these abstractions do have an organic base, and that we can start with what we have, and that's us. We in fact are both organic and inorganic. I mean, we need minerals.
Let's take a look at that.
Our being. We have to admit our connection to the ground. That is the ground of our being, so to speak, and play on words. So I would just like to say I started from there and worked inwards.
Okay, let's
until
take
they
that.
met what was inside.
Yeah, let's take that organic approach, and vision.
Inorganic, excuse me. Organic organic and inorganic.
You eventually move to vision. And I assume vision being with eyesight.
Well, I do connect it with being able to see.
Yes. Okay. Let me take off from that.
But
then.
you can have this, if you correct the vision, the organic vision, you will then move into the spiritual vision of the third eye, because now all symbols have been removed from in front of that perception. I do believe in the third eye.
Yes.
You know, a plexus of nerves, that's what it is, but it's extremely sensitive.
But all you've done is you've substituted God symbol as truth, again using symbolism and just assuming that symbolism is necessarily the case. You've just assumed it or accepted
Assumed that God
it.
is true?
Yes.
Oh, you think it isn't?
Well, I think it should be questioned.
God is reality.
And yes, it can be. At other times, some people's expression of God doesn't seem to be reality or truth.
Absolutely. That's a false image. That's the first commandment. If you can't live according to that, why bother with the other?
And that's why, rather than making any presumptions, even in our minds, even leaving aside the symbols, as you spoke earlier about leaving aside the crosses, the Star of David, and all that stuff, I think we should also set aside, just for a moment, these accepted values that God is necessarily truth. Because then when I hear the preacher then starting to preach to me about God and all of the garbage that comes out of his mouth right after that.
That's because you're believing in the symbol. He's put himself between you and God, between you and reality.
Well, with him, he has attached himself
Yes.
to his God image and his truth. And so what I'm saying is, let's have a level playing field. Let's let even that assumption be questioned. Let's question every assumption. And so I wouldn't merely accept the symbol of God is truth.
Okay, well then we could just, sit there and contemplate infinity, which is okay with me. We eliminate.
Well, no, I don't want to eliminate God. I want to concentrate on truth itself and what is truth.
Oh, okay, yes.
And truth is.
I use the word God, Polka, only because it's popular, and I can't present my argument without some identification.
Some handle.
So I have to kind of come in the back door.
Yeah, and tell me what is the difference, because I know you pay particular attention to words. What is the root of good, and is there a God root to the word good?
I don't know, but I think it comes from wishing. I forget what it's Celtic or what language it is that really means a good day, and it got dragged out by Scottish maybe as it went through the different invaded lands, and it spread. The language spread. So as I understand it, it moved from a short good to a longer good, and became God, and then good morning, and I think it's the good morning or greetings, as you would say, aloha, and I think it's derived from that. That's my reading of it, which I read a long time ago. So that's the best I can do with that, and it satisfied my wondering about that. And then you go back into the translation from Hinduism. Their trinity is the generator, the organizer, and the destroyer. So according to their religion, we are now entering the period of destroyer, which, by the way, is ruled by a woman. A woman goddess.
It would take a woman to do that.
Yes, indeed. We're the only ones who know how. I mean, an unhappy wife is an unhappy life, and you know it. And an ex-wife is even worse.
You just can't get away. You can't run away.
It becomes bittersweet. Okay, thanks, and good Sunday.
Thank you. You too.
Is there any way to get in touch with Michael? I don't want him to feel that I've ignored his request, but I've been overwhelmed in the last
yes,
3
there
weeks.
is. I'll give you a call, and I will give you his contact with his permission, of course, and I'm sure, and he'll be more than happy to do so. Or I'll just put both of you in contact with one another through email.
That's fine.
Okay?
And the only reason I have to ask is because your file expired, and I didn't realize it before I got back to it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to do this.
Oh, okay. I'll follow up. Take care. Aloha.
Thank you very much.
All right. And if you would like to call and join in this discussion and perhaps shed even more light or better light on the subject, you are more than welcome. The reason I asked Sister on this idea of God and good, at times I guess people reach the assumption that God is truth. God is necessarily good. But with so many different expressions of God, then I'm questioning whether or not he still retains that goodness or only in the eyes of others. Because when they use God as their rationalization for killing people or for hurting people or even thinking badly about people, I question whether or not it's the same good God that I had been taught about. And do we need to precede the appeal to God with the first word, good? Good God, help me out here, rather than bad God. You know, if God is, in essence, a spiritual element, and I think the truth is that entering into this idea of spirituality, it doesn't mean that everything spiritual is necessarily good. At what level do we create a God out of spirit? And so in the Hawaiian tradition, you have your division in terms of rank of the God element, the Akua as opposed to the Aumakua, as opposed to the Kepalo, these various spirits. So there's a true recognition of spirituality and the many existences of spirituality. So I would not say that all spirits are necessarily truth or necessarily good or God. When I asked my dad, before he died, he was already older than I was, and so I went up to him and I says, hey Daddy, what would you tell me as those words to live by, from one generation to another, passing down wisdom to me and all that kind of stuff. Give me something. He looked at me and he says, I don't know. I says, well, you got to do something more than just shrugging your shoulder and telling me, I don't know. You got to tell me something. He says, I'm not one of those. And he went only to the 3rd grade. He never set foot in a college campus or even in a high school classroom. He says, I don't know. All I can say is do good. And so I looked at him and I said, that's all you can tell me. And he says, yeah, that's all I can say. And the more I've thought about it, I found deeper meaning in those words. Just do good. And so my question to Sister about how do you differentiate between good and God? Because there's so many different images of God. And I guess a good would have you search for that goodness. And if you want to substitute the image of God, then search for the goodness in your image of God, and not just feel that someone else's interpretation of it directs your sense of goodness or sense of truth. All right. I know this discussion can continue long after this program, and it probably will, and I hope it does in your lives. I want to thank all of you for joining me this morning. I got to get out of this studio. I know that Brother Carol is coming in next. I want to thank all of you for joining me, and I'll be back next week with another 2 days of programming of Hawaiian Potpourri. So my friends, aloha, and thank you again for allowing me into your private places to engage in these visioning, these dreaming, at least this discourse among us. Aloha Hawaii, ahui ho.
Kaulana na pua o Hawaii, Kupa amahope o ka aina, Iki mai ka elele o ka loko ino, Pala pala anunu me ka paka. Pane mai Hawaii moku o ke ave, Koku ana honoa o Pilani, Ka ko'o mai kaua I o mano, Pa'apu me ke one o ka kuhi hewa. Aolea e kau I ka pulima, Maluna o ka pepa o ka enemi, Po'ohui ai nā ku ai hewa, I ka pono sivila a o ke kanaka. Aole makoa e mina mina, I ka pu'u kala o ke au pu.